Lemon Amiga presents a Playguide video review. Sit back and enjoy the show.
Fantastic point of view. No one to tell us where to go. See where.
Hey there once again, welcome to another Lemon Amiga game guide and review. In this week's show we'll be checking out Disney's Aladdin, or at least the one that got released, and this was created and developed and published by Virgin Interactive and released in November 1994. This game is based on the Aladdin feature film released in 1993, co-developed by Disney themselves, so hopefully it should include some Disney touches and some licensed features including the title music.
Fantastic point of view. No one to tell us where to go. See where.
Aladdin was converted to the Amiga by a certain Mr. John Twitty, and joining him from The Last Ninja 2 we have also a certain Hugh Riley, who created some of the graphics, and so the team behind this game is immense, and so the game experience should be top notch and the very best that the Amiga could offer. Unfortunately, it was a conversion, and so it was a rushed game, rushed out there in time for Christmas. And so, well, this game had development hell, as you're about to find out a little bit later on. But for now, let's just check out this game, and by hanging around on the title screen we can see the options. From here we can make sure that everything is switched on and the difficulty is basically on normal. Who'd want to practice a game like this? I've no idea. And of course joystick, well, we can change that actually to a joypad, and that helps with the second fire button. And joypads are definitely recommended in this game, but I'll be using the zip stick. So without further ado, let's just press that fire button and let's check this game out. To begin, we are given a very helpful and a very informative screen telling us that yes, those are the one-ups and those are the bonuses before we even get started, and that saves us looking in the manual. If only games developers were so sensitive to manuals back in the day, we could have had a lot more information in the game. And yes, we get a basic storyline taken from the film, and anyone who's seen the film or the various adaptations of Aladdin over the centuries should be familiar with this. We also get some nice cutscenes, and those aren't animated unfortunately, but they are taken from the movie, and they were drawn by the movie Disney artists themselves, which is a great boon, as anyone who's played a non-tie-in game will be able to tell you the graphics aren't always so top-notch, and so we gain a feeling for the game ahead by this great introduction. But of course introductions are not the gameplay, so let's skip forward and let's have a romp through the Agrabah market. Aladdin is another platformer, but like a Turrican game it gives us a nice big maze to walk around and explore, and there are maybe some hidden features as well, and what we have to do in the meantime is avoid getting killed, and our health meter is actually presented on the very top left of that screen. It's not absolutely obvious, but the look on the genie's face is telling us that we haven't got much health left, and that's a little bit ambiguous, but that's the health meter. and then next to the score we have the apples that we've collected, which we can throw towards our enemies, and also the lives and the diamonds that we've collected so far.
Come on!
By pressing the fire button we can use our weapon, which can be toggled between the sword or the apple, depending if you want a short range or a long range attack, and sometimes it's best to avoid things in order to not drain your health, and we will get health pickups every so often, so that means that we can keep going. You can see the look on the genie's face, he's pretty happy now, and we have plenty of time left on that clock, so that means we can take our time and explore, and what we find is another checkpoint. First level starts off tricky but not too difficult, and so long as we keep on the move and we know how to dispatch those enemies, it's possible to crouch down and get rid of those most of the time. And you can see that the level isn't too complex and we can memorise it, and that means it's fun to explore, and it's also fun to take out enemies because we know where they are because we've played this game before. And lobbing apples off the screen to defeat enemies is another part of this game, and sometimes if you've played it often enough you can just run straight through it. But this is actually me playing this during the Lemon Amiga competition, which was recorded on the 4th September 2016, and so this is my competition footage you're watching right now.
Wow! Wow!
You might notice we're also collecting a few bonuses, and the bonuses in the shape of the genie heads are actually simple bonuses, they don't do anything. The hearts, well, the lives just saw me collecting an extra life there, that gives us another one, and the hearts give us more energy, that's another checkpoint, and this is a shopkeeper, so if we press fire here we can actually buy extra lives as long as we have the crystals, and you saw I bought an extra life there for 5 crystals, so the game generous with lives, and as long as we keep finding them, and as long as we keep discovering all those hidden places and going out of our way, then surely we can keep going with the lives, and that makes this game so much easier. That's level 1 completed, and then we move on to a bonus game. Having failed the bonus game, we now move on to another bonus game which features Abu the monkey. All we have to do is survive, and we can use our sword, I think, to destroy these, otherwise we can avoid them, and we will find crystals as well which drop, and we can collect those for extra points. Marching bravely on, we find a beggar who tells us about a cave, but before we can get to the cave we have to go over the desert to find the 2 halves of a scarab which have been hidden from us, and we certainly need that in order to get through the game. So it's off to the desert we go to look for the 2 halves of the magic scarab, and the first half is somewhere in the desert along a relatively linear path along these levels. even though this was coded by the geniuses at Virgin Interactive, they still couldn't manage to get the Amiga to play the music and the sound effects together, unlike any Turrican game, so unfortunately we do get amazingly drawn graphics, and amazingly Disney quality graphics, as you will agree, and the sound effects are also great, and the explosions are very bold, and even the knives, you can see if we hit those, that gives us a chime, and so the great sound effects in this game are well worth it. And so I think that this game has more on offer, great music and sound effects, and better in some ways than the original Sega Mega Drive version. Taking a leap of faith, we found a dive into death, and so we are now resurrected again. We've now got 2 lives remaining, and you can see the grin on the genie's face reflects the fact that we are alive and we have plenty of time remaining. So let's collect some more of those apples so that we can defend ourselves, and the rest of the time let's romp through this game. See an Aladdin's lamp on the floor, and if we collect that, then that should explode everything on the screen, or at least everything nearby, and that's an easy way to kill something. And you can see the palm trees are very easy to climb, and also the animation on the main character is very funny, and so that really helps the spirit of this game. And you may be wondering that Earthworm Jim does have some of these animation features, and you may be surprised to learn that the Earthworm Jim engine actually uses this same engine because it was the same guys behind it, and they were so impressed with the smoothness of this platform action that they simply turned him into a worm, gave him a gun, and made Earthworm Jim. Even though this was recorded for the game's competition, I'm not too confident with the game, and I've never ever completed it, and you won't definitely be seeing me complete it on this run. And so you can see the shopkeeper requires just a few more crystals for another extra life, and so let's try to find them, and let's try to get some more lives, because in this game if you have those lives it means you can get just a bit further. All you have to do is press the fire button in front of the item that you want. In this case it's not a wish, which is a continue, it's an extra life or 2, and well, we have 4 gems and we need another one if we can get another extra life, but we now have 5. And yes, there are parts that you can backtrack to all the way around the level looking for those extra bonuses. Even though these levels are linear, you do have to go back occasionally and make sure you've collected everything. But I find the controls are amazing, and they are really great. Even though they aren't very tight like a Turrican game, they are really responsive, and that's just what you need with a platformer. On again to the 3rd level, we return back to the town. once we lose our bonus round, and once we have another chat to the old street rat. This version of Disney's Aladdin was originally created on the Sega Genesis, otherwise known as the Mega Drive, and it was also created on the DOS platform and on the NES, the Game Boy and the Game Boy Color, as well as the Amiga conversion that you can see at the moment, which was relatively one of the last to appear, and this game was late in development. And you can see that although this game doesn't have the absolute best graphics of the series, it really does have the best sound, the best sound effects and the best music, and the controls are brilliant, and you don't have to use a flimsy D-pad either, which means you can have precise jumping. So for my money, this is the best of all the conversions, simply because it has that movie atmosphere.
Come on! Come on! Come on! Wow!
I think it's also great that these maps are rather linear and we don't get too lost, and there are often dead ends that we cannot get by, so that we know not to go that way. And so if we make it through to a screen and we find enemies, we find that that's the way to go, and so we don't really get lost in the game. And that's brilliant. It means that young explorers can really get the most out of this, and they don't have to be held up by death just like this. They can simply jump over it, or they can take it on the hard way. You may be surprised to learn that Disney's Aladdin was almost 4 different games, but unfortunately only 2 of those ever appeared to the public. Originally, Disney gave the idea of creating this computer game to a company called Blue Sky, who were going to create a template on the Sega Mega Drive. Unfortunately, Blue Sky created a very boring template of a very boring platformer, and so they were sacked after so many months of development. And the game that they had spent all their money on, which was supposed to coincide with the video VHS cassette release of the actual animated feature, was cancelled, and so Disney had to look around for another creator to code a video game for the movie Aladdin.
Come on! Wow!
Disney then turned to Capcom because they were interested in their Capcom arcade games, and their Capcom quality of course reminded them of the Disney quality, and so they employed Capcom to develop a game of the movie, also called Disney's Aladdin, and that version did actually come out on a number of platforms, including the Nintendo Entertainment System, but that's not this version, that's a different version which also happened to come out in exactly the same month, November 1994, and also happened to have a rake of conversions, none of which happened to be on the Amiga. The third incarnation of this game, that's the one we're playing at the moment, well, Disney went to Virgin Games USA and they said, can you code something that looks remarkably like the Global Gladiators game that you programmed on the Amiga? And Virgin Games says, yes, no problem, we'll code that in that similar cartoony style. And Disney were absolutely blown away by the Cool Spot game as well, which was also on the Sega Mega Drive. And you can see that Virgin did spend the time to plan these levels and draw all those things out painstakingly, and maybe with some hidden features and some bonuses in there. So it is possible, if you look through the archives, to find information about the creation of this game. According to Louis Castle of Westwood Studios, they also petitioned Disney for another version of Disney's Aladdin, which was supposed to come out at the very same time, and he said that this was mentioned at the time of Stardust, which was 1993, and around that period, and he said that they wanted a game based on 3D sprites, ahead of Donkey Kong Country, which was ahead of its time in many ways, but the 3D sprites idea was put on hold because it seemed too far off into the future, and yet Donkey Kong Country came along not too far into the future, using exactly the same thing. So the fourth version of this very game was put on hold and cancelled, and so you will get this version of the game, which appeared on all those platforms. On the Amiga, you may notice we've reached the end of the third level, and bravely we find the end of level boss before we go on to the next world, which is, well, it certainly has a different environment, and in the meantime we have to lob some more apples towards this guy until he stops throwing barrels down on us like Donkey Kong, and yes, this was very much inspired by Donkey Kong. The look on the genie's face is looking very worried, and we don't have much time remaining either, so let's just swap to those apples again and try to remember the pattern that we need to follow to get rid of the boss. The genie is now horrified that we're about to lose a life, and that's precisely what we will do if we fall into that barrel, and just like that, it's a knockout, and so we'll lose a life and return to our last checkpoint. And that's very fair, it means that we don't have to plod all the way through the game from the beginning, and enemies unfortunately don't stay dead, you have to continue from where you last left off. And that's not so bad with a full health of energy, and we still have 3 lives at this point, so hopefully we can get through it. And working your way through the puzzles in this game isn't hard, and there's nothing taxing that will leave the player having to explore the map and getting frustrated running around just in the nick of time. No, all you have to do is destroy those enemies, and then we can move forward onto that next level. I think that even though this game is limited, even with this AGA version, in the colour palette department, I think the animation really stands out, and I think that the use of the original Disney animators who animated the actual movie in this game is very well done, and you can even see evidence of onion skinning. When we throw an apple, we can see there extra animation frames which they used in the business to make it look like the character was very smooth, and it's those extra touches which make this game great. So now you can see we can collect those apples and hopefully now destroy that boss. This bonus game isn't a matter of luck, it's actually a matter of timing, and it is possible to gain quite a lot of extra lives if you get that timing absolutely perfect. But I certainly have managed to do that, but not unfortunately on this playthrough. And unfortunately that's the end of that, so let's move on to the Sultan's dungeon. Because this game was created in a matter of weeks instead of months, they didn't actually have the time to create animated segments like you might expect from a game like this, and today they'd simply scan everything in and play everything as a video, but you couldn't really do that on 8 and 16-bit computers of that time. So what they did instead is drew a single frame from the movie, and hopefully that was enough. But the creators of this game did admit that they ran out of time before every single thing that they wanted to include was included, and of course after the original game you also have to make room for the conversions, which this was a conversion of the Sega Mega Drive by the certain legendary John Twiddy, who also created, well, or rather converted should I say, and recreated the code for The Last Ninja and also The Last Ninja 2, and that amazing game engine really paved the way for John Twiddy's career.
Come on.
It was John Twiddy who also converted 7-Up's Cool Spot game to the Amiga, and also converted Global Gladiators as well from the Mega Drive, so the Disney producers and everybody involved were keen that John Twiddy do the Amiga conversion. Disney's Aladdin was originally coded on the Mega Drive, also known as the Genesis, by a certain David Parry, not Dave Parry but David Parry, and David also wrote the game Savage, which you may remember got released on the Amiga. Whoa, Savage! Which has a tremendous soundtrack and also is based on romping around dungeons killing things. And he moved on to Tintin on the Moon on the Amiga, and also Smash TV, Supremacy or Supremacy, he also coded that, as well as, would you believe it, coding the McDonald's Global Gladiators game on the Genesis, and also 7-Up's Cool Spot. And David Parry, after all of this, went through to Earthworm Jim and the sequel, and then, well, he went on to Enter the Matrix and create glorious games on the future retro platforms.
Come on. Come on.
As mentioned, these graphics were co-created by Hugh Riley, who also worked on the Last Ninja games and also moved on to Supremacy, and he also created the graphics for the Alien 3 movie licensed game, which appeared on the consoles and the 16-bit computers, and I think even the Commodore 64. The other graphic artist in this game was Tierman Ermac, who we heard of with the first Samurai review. He created graphics for that, and also Cool Spot. And with Cool Spot, yet again, you may be seeing some kind of connection between all these guys, and it doesn't matter whether they converted or created on one platform, it ended up on all the others.
Come on.
The music was converted to the Amiga by Andrew Barnabas, who is most famous for Swiv, and after Swiv he was then contracted to convert the music for Cool Spot to the Amiga, and then Global Gladiators, and so yet again they kept it in the family and used Andrew Barnabas for the music conversion of this game. Amiga version is supposed to be a direct port from the Mega Drive, although they did enhance things, like the genie in the top corner was never there on the original game, but is there in the PC MS-DOS version, and so the MS-DOS, which was one of the last to get converted, got all the extra features, but unfortunately it didn't get this great soundtrack, and Andrew Barnabas did actually record the movie soundtrack for the title theme. He sampled that directly and created some instruments in the background so that that would turn into the song. You can see we found another shop, and so let's put ourselves up to 6 lives, and this is the most like a maze that you'll probably find in the game, and it isn't so easy to navigate with all these similar looking columns and even things in the foreground which give us a great semi-parallax effect. Trick to this dungeon is once again timing, and if you can land on something and time it correctly, then you should be able to get through, and those bats appear on the roof and are triggered by us wandering into their vicinity. Sometimes it can be good to get rid of those, but I found that the bats really drain the energy, so if you can run away from the bats, it's certainly possible to do that, and it's actually better for our health, particularly because we only have a vague idea of our health with the gurning genie sat up there in the corner glaring down at us, wondering what are we supposed to be doing next. But you can see that we have got our linear path through this level, and once we know where we are going, hopefully it won't be too difficult. It's just that we're waiting for some extra health at the moment. Even though the game advertises the fact that we have a high score, unfortunately someone forgot to put a high score table in the game, and so the score will disappear as soon as you complete it or as soon as you lose that last life. Still struggling for health, we are rapidly approaching the end of the level, and at the end of the level it gives us a suitably hard bit when we have to jump on top of all these things. And so for a brief moment, if we even leave the controller alone, he will throw an apple up and down and roll it around on his arms, and that is a great animation, and he will do all kinds of things just like that, and it's great that the game has those included. Even though it doesn't really add much to the gameplay, the animation on offer, just like every other Disney game, is top notch, and they insisted on that type of quality control for this game. You can see right at the end of the level there are a number of blocks that we'll have to stand upon before they disappear, and that's pretty difficult, but again, thanks to this map, which I think comes from this level, although I'm not absolutely certain, I think that this is it, with those columns and everything. Well, this map gives you a general idea of the lengths that they had to go to in those days to map out and plot out what they were supposed to be doing in the game, and all this I think required some kind of block map manipulation, I'm not quite sure. So now that we've got past all my failures at trying to get through this particular trap, we can now get through it, and you can see again it's just timing. You look, and you jump. You look, 2, jump. 1, 2, jump. And that's the end of the level virtually. And yes, I have been known to fall all the way down to the bottom of the level again from here, and it's pretty infuriating when that happens. Luckily, it isn't going to happen on this particular playthrough. And yes, like I say, I'm not collecting every single thing, even though this is for the competition, because I'm not very good at it. So let's continue clinging on desperately to those 6 lives, and it looks like take more damage. once we get through to that exit. We've now crawled out of that dungeon and we found yet again John Barrymore, or maybe Lionel Barrymore, dressed up as a haggard old man, defeating our every opportunity, and that annoying parrot as well. So yes, they did get a tiny fraction of animation in there, and that's great, but unfortunately it wasn't throughout the whole game. But those are just minor inconsistencies, and it just proves that they could have created a better game if they'd wanted to. And you can see that even the parallax backgrounds from the console versions are in this game, and those were one of the standout features of the Genesis version. You can see it's very faithfully present in this one, and on this level what you have to do is to throw apples towards idols and they will blow up, and once they blow up then you can continue to the next one. You have to destroy them all, and you have to also avoid fish. At this point you may be able to see one or two signs that this game isn't absolutely perfect. The bats can be pretty energy sapping and pretty darn annoying, and the worst part is if you fall into water, this kid can't swim, and so it means that you'll have an instant death. You can see some spikes, and I'm not even quite sure if landing on spikes, no, even spikes won't kill us, but a little bit of water will absolutely nail us in our coffin, and there's nothing we can do about it except to continue with a few clones that we've managed to collect. We have 3 clones left to complete this game, and we can see that lobbing things from a distance is safer, but with pixel perfect jumps on some levels and timing also required, it can be very difficult. And with these idols you have to turn your back on those and hit those, and if you're facing them then you can't hit them, but when you turn your back you can, and that's pretty darn difficult. And so again, with this particular level, sometimes I find it's best to just run straight through it. Later levels are very much more difficult, and as I say, I've never completed this game. I've managed to get on to maybe level 7 or 8, and you may even get to see how far I got in a later video, but for this one I'm not going to get off this level because, well, I get killed. So whilst you see me, I actually collect the bonus which would trigger the monkey bonus level if we manage to get there. But this isn't Super Monkey Ball, this is Aladdin on the Amiga, and we aren't going to get there. And some pretty mysterious things which I'm not sure appeared in the actual movie. We can defeat those. I'm not actually sure. That looks like flying slugs to me, or flying snails. But what we can see is ignoring the treasure and ignoring things that look like that they came from a Hindu temple, and we actually go through to the magazine scores. The lowest score in this case came from Lemon Amiga, who gave it 79%. Ditto Magazine gave it 80%, and Amiga Computing gave it 85, Amiga Mag gave it 85, and Amiga Power awarded this 86%, Amiga Concept gave it 90%, The One gave it 90, Steel Amiga gave it 90, Amiga Action awarded this 92, and Amiga User International gave it 92, and the highest award goes to Amiga Dream, who awarded Disney's Aladdin the incredible 93%, which gives this game an average score of 8.5 out of 10. At the end of this level, it presents us with two or maybe even one easy boss who materialises from one side of the screen to another. And all you have to do, of course, is to stand at the bottom. You don't even have to jump anywhere, but because of the slight inertia of the controls, sometimes you might end up into the boss by your own controlling. But apart from that, this boss is not even a boss. It's just ridiculously easy, as all Disney bosses really should be. No, the problem isn't this section at all, it's the end of this level, and that is instant death as long as you don't know about the cut-through section, which saves many a life. So that's the boss over with, and here's the flying carpet. And if we jump off onto this platform here, that's the cut-through section. Unfortunately, if you fail to jump off onto that platform and then jump across to the exit, you'll be teleported down here on the magic carpet, and you collect the waypoint, which is not a good idea because it's instant death down here. And as long as you absolutely love pixel perfect timing perfect jumps, you will hit this portion of the game, and you will wish that there is some shortcut that you could find to cut out this level. And as you can see, we are now on 0 lives, and I'm actually going to take this opportunity to save the state of this so I can practice this level a bit later on. But this is the end, unfortunately, of my Lemon Amiga playthrough, and it's also the end of my Lemon Amiga play guide and review. And yes, this game does start off pretty easy, but it gets hard later on, and so you have to have respect for it. And so I really do think that they did a good job, even with the time on offer. So thank you once again, and I hope to see you again in another Lemon Play Guide sometime soon. Thank you.